Everybody knows how great the PSP is, and there were some fantastic games on the system. But today we're going to talk about 5 PSP games that are on the Nintendo Switch. But before we get into the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button down there because it really helps out the channel a whole bunch. So let's get into the video. So first up on the list we have Persona 3 Portable. Now this game is an Atlas classic, and releasing back in 2011 this game was absolutely phenomenal, way ahead of its time for PSP. So in this game you play as a high school student who basically moves to this town, and there's some really bizarre stuff going on. There is something called the Dark Hour in which members can enter this place called Tartarus. Now this is a very bizarre thing, but you find out that you have a persona, which is a physical manifestation of the shadows, and it's sort of like a summon so that you can fight monsters that come out during this dark hour. You end up joining a team called SEAS, the Specialized Extracurricular Execution Squad, and you've got to go through and figure out what is going on in this little town. It is a fantastic sim-like with JRPG elements game. It is just fantastic, and as the story unfolds it just gets wild. It's that typical Japanese JRPG sort of craziness. This was actually a fantastic game. It had its limitations. There wasn't a lot of sort of 3D dungeon crawling in it. There was a lot of sort of text-based stuff, and you'd sort of navigate with this little circular thing going around. But what a fantastic game. Very heavy and rich in story. It was absolutely fantastic. One of the things at the time that really made this special was the fact that you could pick between a male and female character. That was huge at the time, and it's just a really solid game that everyone should go out and play. When this came out on Nintendo Switch, this was definitely one everyone had to pick up, and there were so many things within this game that made it just a little bit better. Predominantly it was just the graphics. Everything was kind of improved. There were some saving areas that you could definitely utilize to progress the game quicker, and it was really cool. You could suspend the save, and it had fully animated cutscenes as well, which was again just another brilliant thing that this game had. So you weren't using your imagination. So again, one of the games that you really need to go out and play on Nintendo Switch is this PSP classic, Persona 3 Portable. Next up on the list we have Prinny, Can I Really Be a Hero? This is another fantastic little game. It is a side-scrolling platformer game where you play as Prinnies, which are little penguin characters. Now what's really cool about this game is the fact that it's a spin-off of the Disgaea series, and you basically are tasked through your master Etna, who is super mad about the fact that her dessert has gone missing, and she tasks the Prinnies to go out and find the greatest dessert of all time. Yes, it's as wacky as it sounds, and it is a lot of fun to play. It's really quirky. It's really challenging as well. It's not like just your usual easy hack and slash type thing. It's got a bit of difficulty to it. This was released back in 2009, and then in 2020 we had the release on Nintendo Switch. Now, to be honest with you, the Nintendo Switch version hasn't got a great deal extra than the PSP version. However, the graphics are slightly upgraded, plus you also get the second game. These are fantastic games that everybody needs to go out and play. You don't need to know the backstory, and I can tell you now, you will have a lot of fun with it. The humor is really quirky, it's fully voice acted, and the amount of times the Prinnies say, "Dude!" is just amazing to me. I absolutely love it. So next up on the list we have Luminous, and this game, oh my god, this game is one of those games where, do you ever play one of those games when you haven't played it for ages and then you get back into it, a bit like Tetris, that sort of thing, where you just get completely sucked back in? That happened to me during this game when I was playing it. When I was playing it for the actual video, oh my god, I sunk about an hour into it before realizing that I was even that far in. It is such an addictive game, developed by Q Entertainment. The objective of the game is just to basically survive by rotating and aligning blocks. And it's surprising how something so simple can be so addictive. This game came out in 2004 and is another staple of the PSP. They did follow up with a second game a few years later, but this is the one that I played a whole bunch, and I absolutely love this game. If you haven't played Luminous, I highly recommend going out and checking it out, because it is just, like I said, it's so addictive, and hours can pass without even realizing. It's got a really funky soundtrack, it's got really crazy effects, effects. It kind of makes me feel like Tetris Effect kind of stole the idea of what should be with Tetris from this game, because the design and everything like that is kind of almost quite similar. The background changes and the visuals alter slightly, so it keeps that sort of thing interesting. In 2018, they released it on Nintendo Switch. They released a remastered version, which is predominantly just an upgrade in visuals and the ability to really play online. It's really fun to play, and I highly recommend everybody go out and check this game out, because my god, I will be going back and playing this again and again and again, because I forgot how great it was. It's really fun to play. Next up on the list, we have Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together for the PSP, and this is actually a remake from a 1995 Super Nintendo Entertainment game. This tactical RPG game is absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of story arcs that play a role within this whole universe, which, you know, surrounds sort of rebellion, conquest, and political intrigue, and there are so many things that just impact the story as you go. Within this game, you meet a lot of different characters with their unique motivations and complexities, and this just adds to the narrative. The story has the ability to chop and change as you go through, depending on your characters, so there is a lot of emotional weights around losing characters. So when you're actually engaging in these battles, you really need to make sure that your characters don't die, because that can deviate the path and also change the way you play the game and the story that unfolds with it. So throughout this entire game, you have to choose wisely. You have to be really careful with what you're actually choosing, because every loss has a really significant repercussion. So in 2022, Square Enix finally released Reborn, the third iteration of the same game. However, this is, as you would expect on Nintendo Switch, just the little upgrades that you wanted to the game. There's better visuals, there's an upgrade to the soundtrack, which absolutely sounds phenomenal. And there's just quality of life upgrades throughout this entire version. And again, it's one of those things, if you're into tactical RPGs, this is definitely a game you should play. Some things to note from this game though, they've removed the rogue class, and they've also removed the random fights on the old maps outside the training city, so that's just something to be mindful of. If you want the better experience, I personally still say the PSP version is the way to go, but a lot of it has to do with preference, so it's up to you. If you have a PSP there, I would say play the PSP version. But if you've got a Nintendo Switch and you want to check this game out, I highly recommend checking out the Switch version. There is no wrong answer at the end of the day.
Activating combat mode.
Now, the last and final game on this list is my personal favorite game on the PSP, which is Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII. This game, released by Square Enix back in 2007, is the prequel story to Final Fantasy VII, where you play as Zack Fair, a young member of the organization known as Soldier, and you kind of learn the backstory, you learn where the Buster Sword comes from. It is just one of the greats. It is a fantastic game and essential for anyone who enjoys Final Fantasy VII. This really is a coming of age story about Zack and how he starts off as just a lower down in the ranks wannabe basically, and how he sort of goes through the ranks and comes up to fight for his honor. This game is very, very good, and again, it's one of those that I highly recommend everybody go out and play. You get to see some really cool things within this game without doing too much spoiler territory stuff. You get to meet Sephiroth before he turns into a bad guy. You understand the story around why he turns into a bad guy. You meet some of the characters you might be familiar with already if you've ever played Final Fantasy VII, and this game is just phenomenal. There is nothing that I can't praise about this game. A lot of people didn't like the WMD stuff, and for me personally, it didn't bother me. I think it's just another cool little mechanic to the story. What I will say though is you will find the end of the story very emotional, maybe more so than Final Fantasy VII. This game had me in absolute tears when I played it. So in 2022, in order to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the original Final Fantasy VII game, they announced Final Fantasy VII Reunion. Now, I lost my mind when I heard about this. I thought, oh my god. Bear in mind, you know, the remake games were already out. Well, the remake game was already out, and I had so much speculation about this game. I thought they're going to change it, they're going to mess about with it. But unfortunately, or fortunately, it depends how you look at it, it is just pretty much an upgraded version of the original game made for Nintendo Switch as well as other systems. This game was just an absolute pleasure to play through again. Even though it sort of retained a lot of its stiffness from the PSP, it definitely was well worth playing through again, just purely for the upgraded visuals and the stuff that went with it. It's such a great game. I highly recommend everybody go out and play this. And like I said, it's so emotional. I just connected with all of the characters in this game, and in my opinion, it's a pretty much damn near perfect port of the game. So if you're into Final Fantasy VII, you need to get out and play this game on Nintendo Switch because it's absolutely incredible. So there are 5 PSP games that are now on Nintendo Switch. Have you actually gone out and played any of these games? I'd love to know in the comments down below. You can share the love, let us know what you thought of the games, and are there any other games that we should be talking about that have now come out on Nintendo Switch? Either way, I love the PSP. Doesn't matter what anyone says, it's one of my favorite consoles of all time. There's some fantastic games on there, and now you can play them on the Nintendo Switch. So anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.